Good evening, everybody. What's up, Seth? Thanks for turning your camera on.
Mhm.
It's awesome to see people out there, and I see many names already that I recognize. Thanks, everybody, so much for joining us tonight. So we we're gonna jump in here in a minute, but we'll wait for everybody to kind of trickle in. Does anybody want to pop in and share, how they're feeling or anything exciting happening in anybody's world today, or anybody want to introduce themselves? I'll get the things started real quick, which is just to say that I'm Matt. If you don't know about um, the work that we're going to be talking about today, this is my 7th season running custom foodscaping, where we do design and installation landscapes. I don't know who's playing that, but it sounds fun. Who just won those bonus points? Come on, own it. No. Okay. Mystery rock and roller. Anyway, I've been doing. Oh, Taylor, you pop in there and say something. Well, we've got some comments here. I'll take them. That's great. Jill says she's excited to be a farmer and step into some garden coaching soon. Taylor says the sun is out after lots of rain. Oh man, this is the perfect time for that combination right now. Sun feels so good before it's so hot. It's been amazing in St. Louis this week. So anyway, I'm gonna get us started here, and just, yeah, huge gratitude to everybody for making it. I imagine that many of you kind of saw my little backstory video in the lead up to this, which is kind of that, you know, I was really into farming and gardening, and I'd done all the permaculture design courses under the sun, and like realized, even after what I felt like was all the learning and the training for this profession, I still didn't have like the this one skill that has been so vital to making a living running a design build company, which is being able to produce a scaled professional. I do this like professional in quotes, right? Because I'm using Google Slides, and I don't feel like this is clearly not like high level design software, but it has done a lot of work for us, and it's gotten us to ultimately what I'm passionate about, which is the install. And this is a really important thing I want to contextualize, is that if you are a really, really passionate designer and you want the really beautiful, fancy design, then I have no doubt that Google Slides is not the best program for that. But if you want to hit the ground running with something that will allow you to plant trees, build gardens, communicate things to clients, and hopefully dip into a skill set that you already have that might feel accessible, then this has worked for me. So I'm just kind of here to share what my experience has been. I'm going to run us through a design and kind of like a basic backyard foodscape, and then we're going to open it up. I'm happy to take as many questions as we have, and we'll kind of go from there. But um, I also just want to preface with one other thing, which the first thing being that I'm really all about like the install, and I'm giving this design I'm going to show you all tonight. This is the kind of thing I give away to clients. I'm not trying to like make the big bucks on this design. I'm trying to sell this project. And what I'm not trying to do, I want it to be a frictionless process. I don't want to create a process where there's all these details, and I confuse the client with lots of overwhelming possibilities, and create this back and forth communication for months so that we can dial down what this project is going to be. I'm trying to create something like super simple, digestible, not overwhelming, and I want to get it to them as fast as possible after our consult, because my goal is during a consultation, I want to paint a picture for people. I want to walk them through this design. I want to get them pumped. And then I want to get them a design that allows them to click the button and make a down payment, which is going to allow us to then bring that project into reality. That's just, yeah, that's my background context. So I'm gonna share my screen, and I'm basically just going to walk you all through what the process is. So basically, this is like I've just had a consult with my neighbor. This is a person who lives a few doors down from me. They want to do a little garden, a little edible landscape. This is super stereotypical for the kinds of projects that we do, which is a vegetable garden from fruit trees and some herbaceous perennials. Herbaceous perennials being like natives or perennial herbs or strawberries or asparagus, things like that, right? Any questions about that context setting before we jump in? And you can just turn yourself off the mic if you want to jump in with a question, because I'm not checking the chat.
Matt,
Okay.
I was gonna pop in just as this is Lindsay, another Foodscaper teammate here. I wanted to just encourage you all to ask questions at the end and just save them to the end and go ahead and put them in the chat, and I will make sure Matt can cover them within an hour. So that's
Yeah,
it.
and one thing, I'll give a note, which is, or maybe this doesn't matter, but never actually, you know what? Never mind. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen and we're going to get rocking and rolling. Let's go. So we're going to be doing a project in Google Slides, right? And so the very first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my Google Drive and I'm going to open up a project that I've already done in the past. And that's actually where I'm going to start a new project. So I'm going to open up a recent project that I worked on. My internet wants to load this. That's strange. It didn't. I open up a previous project that I've worked on. This is one that is actually going to be in the little course that we're offering. That's why it has this weird title, but I'm going to use it anyway. I'm going to go in here. I'm going to make a copy, and I'm going to make a copy of the entire presentation. And then I'm going to go, and then we will like save this in our drive so that we track all of our clients in a little client folder. And then I'm going to go into 2024. I'm going to do, we'll call this design class, and I'm going to save this new presentation in this design class. Usually I would name this whatever it is in the client, like in a client folder. So if we call this Lindsay's, we'll call this Lindsay's garden. So then the very first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go up here above the first slide and I just click add. I make a new slide. I'm going to delete this title stuff because I don't need that title stuff. So let me get rid of that. All right. So now I've got a blank page, right? And I've also got all of the different slides from this other design here on the left. And I'm going to be able to reference those later. So the first thing I need to do is insert the title block of the design into my new design. So we call this a title block. This is like my logo, the date, my name, the address, a scale bar, a north sign, and kind of a name for the project. So I've got all of these grouped. So I've clicked using Shift to just highlight all this stuff. And then I've gone and I've right clicked, and right now it says ungroup, but if you haven't grouped those items, then then you can group them. And that allows you to copy and paste them all at once. So I just hit copy, and now I'm going to go to my new slide, and I hit paste. Then I'm just going to do things like change the date here. We'll change this client to Lindsay. We've got the north symbol. We're going to leave that. We're going to call it backyard, foodscape, and fruitscape. That works for this client too. And then this scale bar, that might be different depending on, we're going to explore that in a minute here once we see the design. So the address for this project, we're going to have to we're going to go to Google Maps for that. And I'm not going to Google Earth. You could also go to Google Earth. I'm just going to go to Google Maps because in most cases, my computer's way faster with Google Maps and I can get the same base map that I need. A lot of times I don't need information in Google Earth, but sometimes I do, and I pull up Google Earth in those cases. So I can see my red arrow where my address is, and I'm going to go click on the satellite view. I'm going to go ahead. I can see my arrow. I'm going to go ahead and zoom in here. And then I'm going to shift command 4 to take a screenshot of this backyard. This allows me to go like this. Take a screen. I have it so that my when I take a screenshot or a screen capture like that, doing shift command 4, then I can just it automatically saves to my desktop. So let's see, got a bunch of plant pictures there on my desktop. I just drag that in, and then I'm going to get this kind of centered. I can see the red line appear there. And now I feel like my design is pretty good and centered. I've got some space on both sides. I need that space on both sides, and you'll see why. And then I'm going to go ahead and right click on this, format, adjustments, and I'm going to change the opacity and take it way down so that you can still see the yard, but it kind of fades it out. And depending on, the brightness of your picture, it will depend on the opacity, but you want to make it clear enough that the client recognizes their backyard, but not, you want it as light as possible because the features that we're going to add are going to make it, they're going to stand out more if the opacity is pretty far down. Okay, so now we've got a backyard screen capture. I feel good about that. And then we need to set our scale bar. Now, I'm actually going to turn the opacity up a little bit so I can see it better for setting this, because one thing I know is that their back deck is about 10 feet. This deck right here where I'm scrolling over is 10 feet. I know that because I measured it during our consultation. But if I didn't know that and I'd forgotten to take that measurement, I can right click on the corner of that deck and go across, and there it is, 10.03 feet. That's how I know that deck is 10 feet. So that's going to allow me to set my scale bar, which is really important because I'm going to set everything else off of that scale bar. So I take my scale bar, I click on it twice, which allows me to just select it, and I'm going to move it. Oop, grabbed the wrong thing. I just hit undo there. I'm going to have to ungroup this to do this right now. So I click on that. I'm going to hit ungroup. That allows me to isolate this thing. And then I can isolate my scale bar. I can and then I'm going to go ahead and kind of twist this to get it so that I want that scale bar to be at that second break right here in the middle of the scale bar. I want that to be right on the deck. So I can see if I click off, like, to me, that scale bar is basically, this is going to be 5 feet, this is going to be 10 feet, that's going to be 20 feet. So now I can delete that one and I can bring this one in, and it will tell me 180 degrees. That tells me I'm perfectly flat. So I'm going to move this over there. And look, it comes out pretty darn good. I'm going to adjust this from the last design. It's very similar to my scale bar. So now I can use this as reference for anything else that I want to make. Okay. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go up here and I'm going to outline the major components of the design. So I'm going to make this polyline. And I'm just going to outline the house. I'm going to go ahead and make that transparent. And then I'm going to go into my previous design and I'm going to kind of see what was I using for, if I want to use those fonts or anything from here, I can do that. In this case, I'm not. I'm just going to go in here, make a text box. We're going to call this house. And I like to use this Helvetica New Light. So we label that house. I'm going to come in here. We're going to do that, make that transparent. I'm really into the black and white. One of the designers on our team used black and white in AutoCAD to make his designs. I find it's awesome. There's so many design programs that got all these fancy symbols and different colors and things like that. And I'm like, I tried to do that a lot. And then I realized, man, black and white, transparent everything really feels good. If I want to click on both of those things by holding shift, I can make the line thicker by going, here's the line thickness symbol. I'm going to stick with just 2. That helps them see that they're visible. And okay, so now I'm ready to actually start building the garden. So what we have is a house. We've got a back deck right here, and then here is where we talked about wanting their garden. And they wanted something like 2 to 4 garden beds, and they wanted an edible landscape. An edible landscape in a little city backyard like this means we're going to plant them some small fruit trees. We're going to try to plant them some, maybe some berries, and we're going to try to get in some flowering perennials, things of that nature. So that is kind of what, like I said earlier, that's like the bread and butter of our business is just kind of, vegetable gardens, edible perennial foodscapes. So I know that this back deck is 10 feet, and I really think for aesthetic purposes, I want a 10-foot garden. So if I'm going to build out a 10-foot garden, what I want to do is create something like this. This is what I call a design schematic. This is a perfectly scaled schematic of the garden footprint. In this case, this is a different garden, but you can see this is really for my team to be able to have all the information that they need to build this out perfectly to scale. And if they want to reference anything, they can look at this grid and they can change the opacity and you can see I built the whole garden on a grid or a piece of graph paper, essentially. And I can just take the opacity just barely up. So how do I make this garden in this case? Well, let's start with a new slide. I'm going to go back to the second position. I'm going to add a new slide. I'm going to delete that. And then I need to go, I've got this slide called a template. And this is, this just allows me to grab the size garden that I'm interested. So in this case, I've got this space where I know that I want to be 10 feet this way, but I don't know how far out into the yard I want to go. Exactly. We've got some wiggle room there. So I'm going to just grab 10 feet this way because I know I've got 10 feet for the deck. And I'm going to grab 15 feet and I move my little line. I've got these lines out here just for reference that make it easy. And then I'm going to shift command 4, which is that function that allows me to grab whatever size I want. I kind of get really close and I'm going to grab 10 by 15 and I screenshot that. And then that allows me to then take this and bring it into my design. I want it on this slide. So I drag it in and there it is. And I want it to take up most of the page because I want this to be really, really visible. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go format. I'm going to change the opacity of this as well. Bring it way down, but I really want to clearly see the lines. Okay. And then what I can do is I can kind of take my previous garden bed and I can be like, okay, so this is where it like gets very particular to me at custom foodscaping. I've got my own patterns. For those of you who are doing this all the time, you've got your own patterns, the things that you like to do. For me, I like 3-foot garden beds. 3-foot garden beds, 3-foot paths. That's my go-to. That's my dream garden. That's what they include. A lot of times, our lumber is 8 feet long, so I like to, if I can make an 8-foot bed, then I do that. In this case, the garden is 10 feet, or I'm sorry, the garden's 15 feet. So I know that like an 8-foot bed may not make that much sense, but I'm basically just going to be like, okay, that's 5, that's 8. What's that look like? I'm going to copy and paste that. I'm going to bring this to the other corner and get those lined up. Okay, now what's going on with all this space? Well, I think, I actually want to back up and come back here, and I want to kind of determine how big I want this garden, because we've got this garage and you're going to see the garage from the house. So generally, if we have a bed up against a garage, then I know I'm going to have some plantings up against the garage because I want to soften, this whole thing with the garage. Generally speaking, this is basically a foundation planting. Like how wide is a bed up against a house? When you drive by a house and you see the boxwoods and the yews in the front, like it's usually like 4 to 6 feet or so, right? And so if I want to figure out how much space I have, I'm going to use the scale bar and I'm going to kind of figure out, okay, that's 20 feet pretty much between the deck and the garage. And so if I want a garden, and then I want like space for walking and access between the garden and then a planting bed. So basically I'm going to say, well, I'm going to make this planting bed. I feel comfortable with that being about 6 feet, because that planting bed will, around 6 feet means I can plant a shrub there and there's plenty of room. And then there'll be 4 feet for like a pathway, and then there'll be 10 feet for a garden. And my scale bar is not perfect, so maybe the path ends up being 3 feet when I get on site, or maybe the bed ends up being 5 feet when I get on site. So this is not like perfect, but it's going to get me close enough so that once I get on site for an install, I can fudge it. So I know I've got about 20 feet there. If I wanted to do that, I could also figure that out by going here and measuring this distance. And that tells me, I come right off the garage, that says 22 feet. So I'm in the range, right? I'm just trying to get close enough to have an idea. I'm going to build my garden. Of course, I can take these measurements on site, and if I could just work off of that as well when I'm at the actual site. So I'm going to go in here. I'm going to make this garden 10 feet, my vegetable garden. I'm going to crop it, and I'm going to come down here, make it 10. Okay, so now I've got the 8-foot garden beds, these 2-foot path. That's not really working for me. I've got this 4-foot pathway in the middle. That's definitely wider than I need. I want to give them the most space possible for growing veggies, but I also want to make it feel like there's good access through this garden, right? So kind of thinking like I could play around with maybe doing 4 beds. I copy and paste those. I put these in the other corner. And now I've got 4 beds. This would give me a 2-foot pathway there. And 2-foot pathway is not terrible. I don't mind a 2-foot pathway. Depends on the gardeners as well. Like these gardeners are people who are very physically fit. They're relatively young. I think they can probably maneuver through a 2-foot pathway really easily. So I'm going to make the main pathway that comes out into the like from the deck. They're going to step off the deck and they're going to come into a 1, 2, 3-foot pathway there. And so I'm going to delete this, and that ensures that if I make a copy of these two, highlight, copy, paste, and bring them in there, Boom. Now I've got, and so that garden, that looks okay to me. There's other options, of course. I could bring these in and make all the pathways 2 feet. And you can see these lines, they kind of snap too. Like you can see they just make it easier. So let's just for all intents and purposes, well, this works out really well, the math, right? They're 4x4 beds with 2-foot pathways. And then a lot of times at this point, like I really don't like I'm going to turn the opacity down even more on the grid because I built out my beds, and I'm going to add some other elements maybe. So I've got this like arbor. We do a lot of arbors. So I copy and paste that arbor in there and undo because I moved. And let's just say that I'm actually going to call this a tunnel. And we're going to make this the same font. I copy and paste that. These cattle panel tunnels, they're all the rage, and we do them quite a bit. So I want to kind of get that squared and centered on my garden. And once I do, then I'm actually going to make a copy of this now that I feel like it's squared. Get that on there. And then I'm gonna copy all that, paste it, and move it down to the next bed as well. All right. So there, I've got my garden. And now I can pretty much do something like I can designate like what the pathways are going to be. I can call this like uh, crushed gravel pathway. I'm going to center this in that text box. Center it on the design. And then finally, I could do something like, I could add a line in here. And that line didn't snap to where I wanted it to. So I'm going to control command zoom in. And that zooming in really allows me to get it precise. And then this line here, I'm going to make extra thick. And we're going to call that, just for all in, we're going to call this basically it's a piece of edging. It's like we sometimes will use like a 4x4 and we'll put it in the ground and we'll call it a threshold. And that way there's like a break between the grass and the and the crushed gravel pathway, because we don't want crushed gravel just spilling into the grass. We need like a threshold here. So I'm going to zoom out, and now I'm basically can take a picture of this garden. So I'm going to shift command 4, and I'm going to grab this whole garden, and I know it's scaled perfectly to scale. If I wanted to do other things, by the way, I can continue to add. I should have slowed down. I can add things that just show the directions, show the dimensions, excuse me. Make that big enough to see. So that shows that that's 4 feet. I can make another one, bring it over here. 4 feet, 4 feet. That pretty much tells me what I need to know. If I wanted to, I can, the garden bed is kind of redundant, so I can call this 4 foot by 4 foot by 12-inch, to help make it just give some further information there. So again, I'll screenshot this because that's going to help me. And now I'm ready to go in here, grab that screenshot. I'm going to put this literally into my design. And the client's going to ultimately have this slide as well. I'm going to kind of get that centered on there. Zoom way in. Make sure it looks lined up properly. I want to make sure it looks pretty darn square to the garage and the deck. And then I can change the opacity of that even. And now, because I'm going to like be showing this whole garden, I'm going to literally label this. Call this a veggie garden. That's way too big. I'm going to center it. I'm going to make it my font that I like. And call that's the veggie garden. And then I'm even going to put a border around this. To make it pop a little bit. So now we can start to see the elements are building, right? So we've done the hard part here. We've built out our vegetable garden. And now we've got, this is the north side, right? Because we've got our north symbol. And we've got this side of the garage. So I want to start building out the edible landscape now. And they already have a tree here. So reminder that I'm going to come in here. I like that is already a pie cherry. So I'm going to come in here. I've got this here, and I'm going to continue with the same font. So I just copy and paste that. And I make this, I do not like doing the lines to label everything. I try to label everything as much as possible to make it clear in the design. So there's a pie cherry here. And then we've got the rest of this space that I want to get like built out along the north side of the fence. There's a fence here. So what do I want to do? I know I'm going to go ahead and group these two things. I grouped the pie cherry. Let's just see, you know, how big that pie cherry is if we want to check it out. Well, it's about 7 or 8 feet. Just interesting to know. We can check it against our scale bar. So then I hit copy and paste here, and I'm going to put another plant. I need something that is not too tall. This is a small backyard, so we're going to do a fig here. So then I've got my fig, and then let's make this a different symbol. I want to do like this is getting really close to the air conditioning unit that they have in the back there. So I'm going to grab a different symbol here. And I've got very, very few symbols that I use. I'm going to copy and paste this fig and then put, I want this to be a patio peach. So that moved because I didn't group these things. I click on both of them. I group. Now I can move them independently. Patio peaches are about, we've got this one that we're really smitten with. The flory patio peach that I'm so into right now. Or Fury. I can't remember. I think it's Fury. And it's like 5 feet tall. So 5 feet wide. So I know that, and then if I want something that's 5 feet, I can just kind of copy and paste. I can check that, make sure it's about 5 feet. Yeah, that's about 5 feet. The reason I was right ahead of time is because I knew that this was like 7 feet. So I wanted to make it a little bit smaller. So, okay, now I need to like build that out a little bit. I need to draw a landscape bed. So I'm going to go to this curve line, and I'm going to start to make a bed. And as I move through this area, I'm clicking every so often. And I'm making a bunch of points. And y'all are going to see that. That's going to be clear there, right? So now once I see the points, I've made what I call an in-ground mulched bed. This is like, we call these, yeah, just in-ground beds, landscape beds. And I'm going to go ahead and make it transparent. And just by doing that, now it makes it a lot more visible that I've got like a landscape bed, an in-ground bed. It's an organic shape. I can kind of mess around with those lines. If I double click on here, I can see all the points that I made along the way. And then, you know what? I'm realizing, this pie cherry is like way up front. And I want to, this really wasn't like, it's more like that, because there's space that I know this from my consult, these plants, like, they're planted just a few feet off of the fence. There's really some space there. I want along the southern end of a in-ground bed, I want like space for low growing things, right? So then I'm gonna come in here and I'm gonna grab these little this plant symbol here. This is like what I use to symbolize an herbaceous plant. It's kind of hard to see, so I'm gonna zoom in by Option Command plus, and then I can kind of see this little symbol. And I like to do these in groups of 3. So I copy paste, and then I'm gonna select all those and group them. And that means that I can then kind of work with them. I can move them around. And so I click them. And if I put something like here, see how these are herbaceous plants, and they're visually showing on top of the pie cherry. But the pie cherry is the tree, it's the canopy. So I have to work from bottom to top. So I don't want anything like a tree covering up an herbaceous plant. So I'm going to highlight these. And then I'm going to Command down. And I click the down button until those things go underneath my pie cherry. Now, if that's taking a while because there's so many layers that Google Slides is calculating, I can just right click on this pie cherry and go Order, Bring to Front. And now this is, see, I can't bring it to the front. Now it's in front. It's going over these symbols a little bit. So I've got that. I'm going to zoom out. And this allows me to do something like this then. I can draw a line. And I'm going to copy and paste, which just allows me to keep the font that I want. We're going to go way down here. We're going to call these so this is what I do a lot of times. When clients tell me like I want they want an edible landscape, they want native flowers, they want like they've got dreams of being able to make tea and watch the pollinators and things like that and get herbs from the yard. So I usually leave things pretty vague like this: herbaceous perennials, chive, sage, yarrow, black-eyed Susan, etc. And that tells the client like we're going to fill this space in with herbaceous perennials, and based on what is available, what I can access at the time when you actually pull the trigger and pay a down payment on this, then I will figure out what plants I have access to, and I'll fill this space in with those. And I'll say in the proposal like how many perennials I'm aiming to plant. And then to kind of like wrap this design up, I'm going to go back here. I'm going to do another curved line. And I'm going to kind of, now I need to do a bed like off the garage. Clicking along the way, clicking. And then it connects with the other one. I don't really like how that line is so sharp. So I can kind of move these until I feel good about this bed. And then I'm going to kind of, there's a window right here in the middle of the garage. And we talked about with the client, like we could do one big tree in the middle of the garage and try to like make it block the whole thing. Do something like this. Or we could do two small shrubs. Something more like this. And we talked about doing two service berries, which we can get a service berry that's, more in the 6 foot range in terms of its canopy. And then I'm going to just center this text within the symbol by double clicking. I type in service berry. See, it spilled. It was too big of a word, so I'm just going to make the text a little bit smaller. Copy and paste that in there. Two service berries in there. And then we're going to do more herbaceous perennials. Actually, let's do something else. We'll call this, just for purposes of this activity, let's say that this is going to be a strawberry patch. So then I'm going to go in here, copy and paste that whole thing. I want this text box has to line up perfectly because all these need to be the same, or else it won't look, very pro. The reason I know that they're going to be the same is when I get that line that shows me they're lined up perfectly. There was I don't know if everybody saw that. It's like there it is. Boom. That tells me they're lined up perfectly. And then I'll do something like strawberry patch. Can type whatever I want there. Okay. I don't like that line isn't in the middle of the patch, but I also don't want it to go through the garage. So that's annoying, right? So instead of using a line, I can make this a polyline, and I can do something like this. I'm going to move that strawberry patch text up a little bit. And that's it. So now, we're not like 99% of the way there, but for purposes of this class, and not keeping you all going forever, I'm going to show you, I'm going to steal a picture here to put into our garden. We're going to kind of like fill this out. We could use other photos. Like we've got this garden arbor. And I like to use pictures, even though I put I said it was a tunnel, but for purposes of time, we're going to just assume that I said it was a garden arbor. And then, we've got things like a compost bin. This client did say that they wanted a compost bin. So then I'm going to put one of our compost bins into this design as well, because I really want this to look fully filled out. I can get that lined up there. And then let's look here. I'm going to make a shape. I'm just going to make a compost bin. Our compost bins are 8 feet. So I need it to be about there's 8. We build 8-foot long compost bins, and they wanted it right in that corner. So I'm going to make it transparent. I'm going to type compost in there. And we're pretty much where we need to be. Of course, there's little things I could fudge around with to make this look more descriptive. I could come in here and do this. Do something like mulched planting bed. But a lot of times, people just understand that it's these in-ground beds are going to be mulched. So then what I will do at the end is I'll kind of go in and delete all the unnecessary slides. that I didn't need anymore. And now this is what I really need to give to the client. So that's what they get. And then basically, something like this will take me an hour, and then I can get it to the client. If the client had some like questions about their, the layout, or they want to see something potentially before I bid anything, and I might send this over to them, and I might say, hey, you know, check this over. Let me know what you think. I'd love to, get a bid or a proposal over to you guys if this looks like what you had in mind, kind of thing. And then this is there for, I might add a little bit more text or a few pictures in here, but this is like what I'll build on and then continue to use for schematic reference here. So like sometimes after the client has decided on the project, I might do something like this. And I might label this line red. And then that would tell, we will often do red like that to show irrigation. And so then this is like for easy communication amongst our team. It like tells them, okay, this is where the spigot is up against the house. And this is the irrigation plan of where we're going to run the main line to get into all these different beds. So I can do stuff like that. Y'all, I think I'm gonna take a sip. I've been talking, and start taking some questions, and hope that you all learn some things by watching that process unfold. So
Thank you, Matt. That was
yeah, I'm gonna
amazing.
come off share just to get myself grounded for a second, and then Lindsay, it sounds like maybe I see in the chat we have a lot of questions, so maybe we want to go about it that way.
Sure. Yeah, I'll just feed them to you. So you don't have to you can just be present. And we got
Great.
a good question from Greg at the beginning. He asked if Google Maps doesn't work for a property, say there's a lot of tree cover, do you have a good process for making a base map to scale?
Well, the way that I do it, if there's a lot of tree cover, is I go to Google Earth and you go back in time until you get a winter date, basically. So this is a thing you can do in the temperate climate. Where I'm at in St. Louis, like there's always dates you can find in Google Earth that are in the winter when all the trees have lost their leaves. That's how I do that. And if you can't do that, then you need to be taking really good measurements when you're at the site, and you just literally have to build out the garden from you need to be better about taking measurements when you go and mapping things out, I would say. Yeah, that's how I've done that.
Yeah, they're saying we've got a few people from the Pacific Northwest saying they have all conifers. So
Yeah, that's hard. I mean, these I don't know that I have the answer in those cases, besides like taking good measurements and building out your actual base map through the way that people did it before Google Earth, is like measuring things out and actually creating something like, so if I go and share again, right? Like if we're in here, I would need to do something like actually have this yard measured, right? So I mean, you're probably going to be able to see the house, right? And so then I'm going to come in here and I'm going to draw my polyline, and map out this yard, and I'm going to need to know these various measurements, and like put measurements on the property so that I can start to build my map off of there. without getting too far into the weeds, that's kind of how I would begin to build this. But if somebody has like, I'm sure somebody, Pacific Northwest people where you've got, maybe you can chime in and help answer the question, somebody in the room. I will also say that we, 9 out of 10 times, I'm designing in sunny spaces. Like we're planting gardens here, right? So um we're really like sunny. I mean, I understand the conifers are obviously going to have their own shade issues, but I wonder like how many times are you putting in a garden under a conifer? It doesn't seem like that's really the bread and butter of the foodscaping movement, but
We've
I'll
got a
leave it
question from Taylor. He's asking, is this scope of design included with your consultations or would you charge for this? Good question.
Yeah, I give this away for free, and we charge $200 for consultations. So this is included in the $200. And if they don't go forward with this project, that is a loss. That is just lost time, for sure. But yeah, it's like a cost of doing business. And when this took me a long time, it felt bad. Like I did not sometimes like if I did this, and it took me many hours because I didn't know what I was doing at all. And then I sent it off to the client. They were all excited, and then they just like never pulled the trigger. I was salty about that because mostly because I just felt like I wasted so much time. But also, like the truth is, this is hard to charge for. I mean, this is like um I think it needs a lot more like things to jazz it up to feel like it's a design you can charge for. And like I said, that just hasn't worked for me in my experience. Like that just creates this whole deliverable where then I need to send them a design proposal. And so, okay, so I tell them at the end of the consult, our next step is we're going to work through a design. I'm going to send you a proposal to work through a design, and it's going to be $1,000. So I'm going to ask you for a down payment on a design. Then I need you to pay that down payment. Then I'm going to do the design. Then I'm going to ask for feedback. Then after your feedback, I'll make amendments. Then you can pay the second half of that design. Then after that, I'm going to get you a bid for installation of that landscape. And then it's like 3 months later, and it's like their air conditioning went out and they don't care about your foodscape project anymore because now they got to fix their AC. Um, so I'm just like, I want to get this thing off while it's fresh and exciting for them as fast as I can. I hope that answers your question, Taylor.
Yeah. Vivian asked, do you do the second step design in Google Slides also?
What's the I'm not sure what the second step.
Second step design. Vivian, you want to say more? You can type it in the chat or just, oh, the paid design. I see.
Oh yeah, I do. And it's just way
Okay.
more it's just more information. But honestly, I don't do a ton of paid designs. If something is going to take me more than a few hours, then I will do it. But I do them all in Google Slides as well. Yeah, doing the same deal.
So Matt, we've got 5 minutes left, and I wondered if you wanted to chat a little bit about your Google Slides course, which is just this class on steroids. So you want to share a little bit about what?
Oh yeah, I mean yeah, it like breaks this all down and shares kind of the whole step by step, lots of like walks you through it a little bit more slowly and gives you access to tons of previous designs that I've done that you will then be able to just copy and paste and use those as templates. You'll have tons of pictures that you'll be able to utilize from those. And you can basically just like see what's going on so that when you build your own designs, you'll have all these symbols, you'll see what fonts, you'll see, what's going on. You can click around on all these things. You'll have the title block that you can use. You just don't have to start from scratch and waste your time and in the same respect. So I think that's what yeah.
It
That's
also, I
basically the
also want to
pitch.
say it includes a monthly free, included Zoom call with Matt to like talk through your frustrating problems you're having with Google Slides because they're sure to arise. So we do a Wednesday night once a month Zoom call where Matt will answer your questions, which is pretty valuable. Grayson asked, I know I missed it, but can Matt explain how he got his 520 or 5, 10, 20 foot scale at the bottom? That'll be in the
Yeah.
recording. So I think that's probably, we've only got a couple minutes left. Does that
Yeah, I
sound
mean,
good?
I'm happy to stay on here. Lindsay, do we have the recording power? Because I do want to make sure people's questions get answered.
Of course. Yeah. If you're willing to talk us through it again, that would be awesome.
Yeah, I'm trying to get rid of this. Is my screen still being shared?
Okay. Yeah, I can see.
Yeah, the way that we get the scale bar is you need to know something in the landscape, which you can figure out through Google Earth by going in here. I find, okay, I could go off of this house and I go measure distance, and then I just look at that. And I'm sorry, this is a garage. And so I'd want to get myself something um, during my consultation. This garage is about 20 feet, it looks like, right? So then when I make my scale bar, I copy this scale bar, and then I'm going to get it there. I'm going to set it in. And then this tells me that that's going to be about 20 feet. And then I can use that for my other distances. Does that make sense?
Yeah, Jill's asking, where is the scale bar from?
Where's the
And
scale bar from?
it looks like Grayson got his question answered, so that's good.
The scale bar is just, it's this thing. It's just a piece of, you'll get this with the Google Slides. It's just a thing off the internet, like a scale
With the
bar.
course. Okay, so you just grab that from like Google Images or something?
Yeah, I mean, it's just like there's just free scale bars that I got, from at
Yeah.
some point a long time
Yeah.
ago.
Okay, cool. Yeah, a lot of these images you can get on Google Images.
Yeah, I mean, these are all the little things that just like you don't have to deal with.
Yeah, totally.
The
So we've got 2 minutes left. Are there any other questions? Sounds like this has been really helpful for people, Matt. So you did great.
Oh, great. Is that we got through all the questions?
Yeah, let's see.
Oh,
I
good.
think I got everything. People are just talking about how they charge in the chat.
Okay.
Um, so that's very useful for everybody. Um, yeah, I think that and you guys pop in the bottom if we missed anything, but I think that's it. Perfectly concluding at 8 o'clock. So yeah, thank you, Matt. This was so awesome and really, really amazing skills to get people started working with clients like pretty quickly.
Well, thank you all so much for showing up tonight. I hope that people were able to get something out of this. Even if you're not interested in doing the course, this is yeah. I hope people were able to take something away, and wishing everybody a fantastic start of the season. It's like I don't know if y'all are feeling this energy right now. It's just building, and it's about to unleash itself onto us. So I hope everybody has a peaceful, bountiful, and a wonderful spring season. We're hoping to continue to be in touch with everybody as we continue to roll out the different programs for the Foodscaper this year, and hope to connect throughout the year with everybody. Wishing everybody a great night.
Thank you. I also wanted to mention on closing that I did put a promo code in the chat for $20 off the Google Slides class, if that's helpful. But yeah, thank you all so much. And I'll also be sending that promo code out tomorrow in an email. So don't feel like you have to scroll through all these chats. But thank you all so much.
Ciao, everyone.
Bye.